Welcome to Multi-Studio Mastery, a show where we nerd out on studio growth, leadership, and operational excellence in boutique fitness. I'm your host, Tessa Thomas, co-founder of Pipeline Solutions. We work behind the scenes with studio owners and operators to streamline back-end chaos, improve retention, and scale sustainably. On this podcast, I sit down with industry leaders, multi-studio owners, and operators in the thick of it, so we can unpack what's really working and what's just noise. If you're building a stronger, smarter studio, you're in the right place. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again. Today on Multi-Studio Mastery, I'm joined by Sam Tooley, co-founder and CEO of Alpha Fit Club, a fast-growing boutique group training concept that's making serious waves in the fitness space. Sam's built on more than just sweat and branding. It's rooted in community, loyalty, and an unshakable commitment to creating something bigger than fitness. So from opening his first location to launching a franchise model that's already scaling fast, Sam's journey is full of powerful lessons for anyone looking to grow with intention. In this episode, we'll dig into what it takes to build a brand with soul, how to lead through adversity, and the operational decisions that help Alpha expand without losing its edge. So welcome, Sam.
I like the intro. That sounds good. And no, I appreciate you having me and excited to break it down and kind of talk about the journey and what we're up to.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks so much for coming on, Sam. I'd love to, I kind of gave a brief intro there, but if you could kind of tell our listeners what Alpha Fit Club really is about and where the idea came from and kind of why the timing was right for you to start.
So I don't know if the timing was right, but I will absolutely tell you how we got here. So Alpha Fit Club itself is a strength and conditioning circuit style group fitness experience. And we like to call it an experience because it really is one. The second that you walk in, you feel like you're maybe transported somewhere else. And that certainly is by design and with intention. And so we launched the concept in 2019, which is, we can kind of future forecast into why that might have been not the best moment, but
right, absolutely.
Ultimately it all works out. And we opened it in my hometown. So I grew up in Westfield, New Jersey, kind of like your quintessential suburban New Jersey town. My mom grew up there. My grandparents were high school sweethearts there. My great grandparents lived there for 102 years. So the running joke was that they couldn't get rid of us. I moved back home. I was a track and field athlete growing up, and I started coaching at the high school, which is this amazing historic track and field program in New Jersey. Most championships in public school history. Biggest track team in maybe the country. It's 300 kids, which is bigger than most graduating classes, I think. So I just had this, my roots were there. I had this foundation there.
We're going to get into kind of what made that first location work a little bit, but, just right in that time, were you all able to stay open at all? Did you have to shift outside or what did that period look like for you?
We did everything we could, right? I remember, I actually remember the week leading up to it where there was uncertainty in the air. You started hearing rumors and whispers about this, that, the other thing. And honestly, I think if we all really reflect back on that time, nobody knew what was actually going on. It was bizarre to really think about. And for me, I was like, what's the right decision? Should we close? Should we not close? What's real? What's not real? Almost fortunately, the decision was made for us, right? Where on March 15th, we had to shut down. And this was my first year in business, right? At least with regards to Alpha Fit Club. I had some smaller gyms prior to that, what have you, but I had poured my life savings and then some into this business. We were crushing it. It was exciting. We had ambitions of opening a second and third, whatever. And I remember just sitting at my desk being like, okay, what are we going to do? And I felt bad for all of 30 minutes for myself. And I just said, okay, well, let's go to work, right? Let's figure it out. So we started with the Zoom classes. We froze everyone's membership and just said, we're not obviously charging you during this time. We're going to take care of you. We're going to try and take care of our team simultaneously. I was more worried about our coaches, our staff, and our members, right? These were people who had quit jobs to join my team. These were people who I knew loved the gym and it was their outlet. And I wanted to make sure that we showed up for them. And so started with the Zooms. Eventually, as things started to change a little bit, we took it to literally the streets of my hometown with a boombox and a whiteboard, and 200 people would show up in the middle of our downtown. We rented a tent from Party City and started throwing workouts in our parking lot. Our neighbors, you can imagine, certainly didn't love us very much because we were running a group fitness class out in the street.
Yeah,
Um,
been there.
yeah, yeah. But we also took it as an opportunity where we felt people were craving connection and
Mm,
craving community, and
right,
it lit this fire and reaffirmed in my mind that we were absolutely onto something.
right.
And I think you had to have this belief that the storm would pass and we would all come out of this as a larger community. So we looked at each other and just said, we're going to double down and we're either going to be the smartest people in the room or the luckiest people in the room, however it was, and maybe a little bit of both. But we signed our second and third corporate leases in the middle of the pandemic. I have pictures of
Wow.
me with a mask on, a bandana around my mouth, you name it, doing construction, walking through these spaces, and people thought we were out of our minds,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
very rare that people were pushing forward, signing leases and spending construction dollars, but we were able to sign amazing leases, get fantastic
right.
terms, and for the people
Yeah,
who wanted it, they were swiping the card ready to sign up and ready to join us once the doors opened. And so
right.
we opened our second and third corporate studios in March of 2021 and June of 2021, 45 minutes north and 45 minutes south of that hometown base, because a lot of the pushback that we got when we talked about franchising was
Right.
it works in your hometown. Can
Mm,
it work somewhere else? That was a fair challenge. So I said, let's put our
yeah,
money where our mouth is and find out.
got you. And so those second and third locations, they weren't yet franchised. They were under the same corporate
Yep.
umbrella. Yeah,
So we opened our second and third studios, and we didn't know what we were doing, just like we didn't know what we were doing when we opened the first,
yeah,
And I think
for
my
sure.
background was in private training. My first gym was 700 square feet. I expanded to 1,600 square feet. Like I just was figuring
Yeah,
it out as we went. But I had this vision and I had this burning desire to make it work. And so it was kind of just that was my mentality. I felt like I was in it for the right reasons and also moving and shaking a little bit differently in terms of what we were building. Felt like we were taking
hmm,
the best of everything we saw out there in different markets and bringing it to markets that were underserved and yet incredibly hungry for what we were
right.
providing. And
Yeah,
that was, obviously proven by how quickly we were able to ramp up membership and revenue. And people saw that. And as we started building the foundation for our franchise system, we had so many knocks on the door by people excited
mm,
about what we were doing that ultimately,
right.
after 1 year of running those three corporate studios at the same time, we ended up
Yeah,
selling 20 franchises before we ever opened our first, which
wow.
I later
Yeah,
learned was pretty much unheard of.
that's amazing. And so, how many locations are you at now that are
So as,
open or
yep.
in pre-sale or anything like that?
So as we started this year, we had 13 studios open, and we will end the year with 21 open studios. So
Amazing.
pretty much this is a big year for us. We're
Yeah,
basically doubling the business. I feel fantastic about it because now we're opening studios with 250, 300, 350, 400
yeah,
members. Whereas when we
amazing.
first started, I didn't even have a picture to show you what the gym was going to look like. Changed up some pre-sale tactics, obviously have a story to tell as we launch these studios, and you have thousands of members across the state of New Jersey who are screaming from the mountaintops about how much they enjoy what it is that we do.
Are all of those locations in New Jersey, or are you branching out different states? Just
So
yet, not
right
yet.
now we're Jersey,
Cool.
born and raised,
Love it.
and still home. But we did sell a 5-pack in Westchester County, New York. We
Cool.
sold 2 locations in Long Island. So right now we
Yeah.
have about 15 units sold, not open, and we are in active conversations daily with franchise prospects as well that want to open everywhere from Southeast Connecticut towards Eastern PA. So still
Yeah.
really primarily in that Northeast hub, which
Yep.
is fantastic in its own right from a support perspective as
Hmm.
well. And again, that brand recognition and reputation that never hurts.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. It's great. And what comes to mind for me is what were the challenges from, 1 to 3 versus 3 to, now 15, 20 plus?
So admittedly, I feel like I blacked out the challenges of one and
That's
three.
fair.
It's almost like I have this
Yeah.
grand vision in my mind that it was fun and it was easy and all of these
Right.
things. I remember it as that, so I'm going to let that memory be that.
Fair.
And I
Fair.
also remember the real struggle of launching our first franchise
Mm.
because here I was to that same point thinking that it was fun and easy, and quite frankly, probably painting that picture to prospective
Right.
onboarding franchisees where I was like, hey, look at how great this is. Look at how much we're kicking ass. I can't wait for you to do the same. And they pick their heads up as they go through our, quote unquote training and onboarding and you name it. We
Yep.
don't have a lot of that because we haven't done a lot of that. Now, I thought we had everything documented, bulletproof, systems, processes, you name it. But as questions pop up that you don't have documented and things happen that you haven't seen before, it's a
Right.
whole can of worms that now you're just figuring out together. And
Right.
as a franchisor, you want to build trust from the jump, along the way, through the problems, you name it. And if you don't have the experience, you don't have the experience. Our first franchisees, luckily for us, were fantastic operators, entrepreneurs. They figured it out. They knew they were joining a young brand. Some of them
Hmm.
even had franchise experience with other young brands. And so they knew what they were getting into, even if we didn't.
Right.
And luckily for us, we fought through those trials and tribulations. Many, if not all of those franchisees have reaped the rewards of their hard work
Mm.
alongside ours and are sitting with very successful studios with high member counts, high revenue, strong margins, you name it. But others have, struggled for the same reasons, right?
Right. Right.
So I think the first lesson is setting proper expectations. And I wrote about this the other day, and I continue to make sure I think about it, is I need to make sure that we're painting a picture of what it really takes to be a
Right.
successful franchisee. And at the end of the day, you're opening a small business. So I'm
Yep.
going to give you the playbook, but you need to roll up your sleeves and do the work, no matter how good that playbook is. If you're not
Right.
willing to do the work and check the box within that playbook, we're going to be looking at each other blinking quite a bit when there's nobody in your gym.
So shifting a little bit to, not the franchisees, but your members and the core of what you built, which is your community. How do you think you've been able to build such a loyal, local following in the region?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it started obviously with just how we wanted to show up in the studio, right? How we wanted to be there. I think I had such a great appreciation for what fitness had provided me and what
Hmm.
great coaches had provided me that when we set out to design the concept, like that was just on the forefront of my mind. I think a lot of times, fitness entrepreneurs, they start out because they love training, they love coaching, right? And I
Yep.
think it takes a very unique skill set to evolve beyond that and become a legitimate entrepreneur who's focused on the mechanics of business and scaling, you name it.
Yeah.
And that's not for everybody. And I think even
Right.
as I look back at my very early days in business where I had a 700 square foot studio, my dog, me, a squat rack, you name it, like that was the setup. And it was a pure joy for coaching people and
Right.
helping them believe in themselves when maybe they had lost belief in themselves. They didn't know what they were capable of. Fitness for me was always this catalyst of change outside the confines of the four walls that I was in, right? And it helped me build confidence in what I was capable of doing because in my background was track and field and cross country. Running was so fair. Running was so
Mm.
pure. I was a mediocre runner when I first started, and I evolved over 4 years to become a state champion, a school record holder, not because I was incredibly gifted, but because my coach saw something in me and
Right.
demanded, right? Demanded that I like lean into that and find out what was possible. And that becomes addicting, right? That becomes the
Absolutely.
flywheel of building confidence in yourself. And I lost that for a long time. And so
Mm.
when I jumped back into fitness for my own, mindset and mentality, I was like, that's right. Like that's what this can do for people. And I wanted to wake other people up to what was possible. So it started from this very pure place. And I think that was the foundation of our first studio. The product is the confidence that we give people by them showing up each day and how they walk out of the gym with a little bit more pep in a step, a little bit more swagger. And that is contagious, right? Not
Right.
just for them, but for the people in their lives.
How do you then filter for the people that are going to hold that standard now at each new location that, Alpha opens up in the network?
So I think it starts at the top, right? I think it starts with our franchise partners. And I think originally we didn't have this big business to call on or to say this is proof of validation. Most people were signing on because they were touched by how we were showing up in the world and the communities that we were building. So they were opting in for that reason and that reason alone. Now, we certainly said yes in certain instances where looking back, again, maybe based on expectation setting or skill set or business acumen, whatever, where we made it harder on ourselves to launch successful studios due to the operator or maybe the expectations we set in terms of what it takes to run the studio. So lessons learned there. So now to answer your question more specifically, as I vet prospective franchisees, it is mutual in the interview. They are interviewing me, which I think a lot of prospective franchisees think that it's always their decision whether or not they're going to do this thing. And I can sit here very confidently saying, oh no, this is a mutual interview right now because this is a partnership. We're going to be working together for a long time. You are going to be representing the brand that I built blood, sweat, and tears, right? Alongside my team and co-founders. So now I'm in a position where I'm very grateful that I can say no.
Just curious on that, if you found any patterns with the people that do fit, were they previously college athletes, they have previous franchise experience?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it won't surprise you in terms of what these intangibles are. I think having an entrepreneurial spirit, right? Someone who understands that the burden of responsibility is on them and no one else to make it happen. That's just, it is what it is. I think it's that figure things out mentality and not always asking for help or pointing fingers, whatever, right? I think it's that self-starter at the end of the day. Those people will always win, no matter if they're a franchisee or just, working a job themselves or starting their own business, right? That to me, that tenacity to just make it happen and figure things out. I want to look for that in, my fiance. I want to look for that in my friends. That's the type of energy that I want to be around. So if I can find that in a franchisee, home run.
I like to think of it as like just a world-class mentality. Like anybody, it doesn't take anything to raise your standard. It's actually your own decision at any given point in time to be world-class. And whether that's your world, the world, your region, whatever that is. So I love that. And taking on that accountability is massive. Just generally speaking.
I can give you an interesting example. It's a question that I've been asking managers of studios that find themselves maybe teeter-tottering around that break-even point or at a membership level that they're not excited about. And I've been asking this question of, if you were to lose the business potentially in 3 months, right? 3 months feels like the right time horizon where it's not you're making ridiculous moves or what have you, but you have enough time to focus on team, experience, outreach, you name it. But I say, if you were to lose the business in 3 months and you didn't hit whatever goal we've decided upon, what would you do differently than you're doing right now? How would you show up differently and move with greater urgency to get the goal? And if they start rattling things off, like I would do this, I would do that, I would do this, I would do that. And I just sit there silent and I come back and I say, it sounds like you know exactly what you need to do and you're just not doing it. Now, if they're sitting there and they're dumbfounded and they're like, I don't know, right? I really have no idea. Then I can say, okay, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Are you doing it? So more often than not, to your point, are you willing to do the work required that you said you were going to do? Because it's not complicated, but it is absolutely hard. Like one of the annoying coaching sayings I pull out all the time is like, simple, not easy. I agree. It is challenging. But is it simple? Do we just need to do these things ad nauseum until the thing happens? More likely than not, in my experience, the answer is yes.
Yeah. That actually kind of leads me to what I want to ask you about next, which is, your leadership team. Who's involved in your leadership team and how do you complement each other? Because in growing a business and now becoming a franchisor, there's definitely certain things that I'm sure, you have your strengths at, that your partners have their strengths at. Like who kind of owns or operates certain parts of this business and how do you all complement each other?
We absolutely have what I consider to be almost like the mighty ducks of people, the weirdest collection ever that come together to form like this championship winning team, both personality, both skill set, both background, all of it. I think my skill set lends itself to vision, right? And helping people align with that vision. And I think that's the role of like a front-facing founder, a CEO, right? I need to be able to understand the business holistically. I need to understand what gaps might be causing some shortcomings. I need to think about what's going to make us stand out and get people excited about the brand, both from a franchise perspective and a member perspective. So I certainly wear a number of hats. And I think, again, as a founder whose DNA is in the brand and a CEO who still needs to run the business as a business, that skill set has served me very well. I certainly have had to wake myself up from time to time in terms of, am I doing a good enough job? Am I moving with the same urgency that I would ask a manager to move with a more simple task, potentially of growing membership at a single studio? Absolutely, right? I think oftentimes it can be easy to get complacent or to not recognize you're not doing enough or thinking big enough. But I'm very fortunate in that there are plenty of things that I am not good at and also not interested in. One of my co-founders is our CFO. He has been a professional CFO in every business he's ever been in and has a much longer pedigree of doing business. Another co-founder was a partner at a hedge fund for 17 years. He is a financial wizard, and at the same time, he also understands deal making at a high level, right? So from a business development perspective, he comes with a wealth of knowledge and experience in other industries that I certainly don't have. Another co-founder, and there's 6 of us at the top of this thing, incredibly creative and thoughtful. He moves much slower than I do because he takes more time to think things through. So it's a nice yin and yang, right? You have another co-founder who had 2 decades worth of group fitness experience, right? So you have these pieces to the pie where I'm fresh and new to fitness. I have a different perspective, but yet there's a foundational component to what's tried and true, and you only learn through time in the room. Most of our talent has been homegrown. They've been with us for years, and I am not saying that in a sense of they've been with us, therefore they are with us. I'm saying that they've actually grown and evolved alongside the business and been able to keep pace with it as well. And again, our franchisees who started with us from the jump and now have launched their second or third studios, they'll be the first ones to tell you, wow, what a different team this is than it was 3 years ago.
I'm assuming people came in as you started growing, or did you start with your 6 from your first location?
In terms of the founders?
In terms of the founders, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was the 6 of us from the jump. Basically
cool.
3 different groups, if you will. We went into the city. We started taking group fitness classes together as we were exploring different concepts, what we liked, what we didn't like. Many of them had been working out together locally, and I was the local new kid on the block with the new gym, and so we kind of found each other. And when they were talking about opening a group fitness concept, whether it was, taking over the local Orange Theory or opening the first F45 in New Jersey, whatever it may be, we kind of just looked at each other and said, you know what? We think we can do it our way and feel better about that. I've never been good at having a boss you. And quote unquote, being a franchisee for another person's brand for me probably would have been a challenge because it almost would have felt like I too had a boss in a certain type of way. I needed the creative flexibility to design something that felt like an extension of myself. And my first gym ever was called Alpha Performance Studio. And so when we opened Alpha Fit Club, that felt right to me. It felt like I had the freedom and flexibility to make this thing what I knew it could be.
The answer typically lies in who else is going to bring this vision to life. And it sounds like you're able to find your who's, quote unquote, kind of organically, which is really great. And, if that doesn't happen organically, usually the typical kind of way you go about it is thinking about the things that you don't like to do, where your deficits are, and, who's going to be able to support yourself as the visionary if that's what's needed. We talked about obviously COVID a little bit, but the market just generally, if we're bringing that into the professional realm and fitness, it's evolved quite a bit, since that time. There's kind of a pre-COVID market and a post-COVID market. And there's definitely a lot of owners, operators that have found that to be quite challenging. If they were open before, things don't look the same. The member base has shifted, people working from home, all sorts of things. So I'd love to get your take, advice for building resilience and momentum and taking care of yourself from a mental perspective, because it's, as we said, simple and easy are 2 different things. We can know what to do, but getting through those times can be quite difficult.
I think for me, whether it's, having gotten sober right out of college, right, as an example, I dealt with loss in my immediate family, my dad, my younger brother, 9 months after that. There's been a tremendous amount of traumatic moments in my life, many that also haven't, been centered around loss as well, right? So one of the things that I always make sure that I remind myself of, right? It's oftentimes about reminding ourselves rather than needing to remind anybody else. And yet I'm given this gift of talking about it because people, for whatever reason, are interested in my opinion of it, right? Where when you have that unique perspective, getting to share it, I think is something I don't take for granted, right?
Right.
So for me, I think having gone through those things, it gives me a unique perspective of like what hard really is. And so when things happen and fires happen at work and people do things you don't like, to me it's like just life and it's not a big deal because I'm like, okay, well, contextually speaking, is this really that big of a deal? The answer is no, right? Even when COVID came up and the gym had to shut down, yes, in that moment it stung and it hurt and it was my world, right? But contextually speaking, like I brushed it off. I said, what's next? What do we have to do? How do we show up in this moment? What's going to benefit me next week, a month from now, so on and so forth? Is it to sit and to pity myself, or is it to brush myself off and say, let's go? And the answer becomes obvious, right? Now, in that moment, I'm not diminishing the fact that it's really freaking hard. But I think having that perspective that everything will pass is so much easier said than done, especially when you're in that moment. But even the good times, right? Like even when things are great, especially in a business, when you run a business, and we talk about this, like you're running a business, everything's awesome, you're kicking ass, like knowing in the back of your mind that something is going to happen that's going to put a damper on your parade is very valuable from a perspective. So I try to keep myself very grounded, very humble to that. I lean on great resources, great people. I think having a tight circle that you can go to when things happen and just soundboard, having tools, right? Whether it's going to get your gym, going to the gym and getting a workout in, journaling, meditating, going for a walk, you name it, knowing what you need to call on when you need to call on it is very valuable. So it's almost like once this happens, you do that and therefore you feel better. And again, so much easier said than done. We go back to what makes a successful franchisee or entrepreneur. It's that tenacity, that willingness to dust yourself off and go again, go again, go again, an unwillingness to quit. I don't know what it means to quit. I've quit in past chapters. I've absolutely folded and I've absolutely regretted it. So now when there's that moment where I want to quit or I want to, back off or I want to make an excuse and point at somebody else rather than myself, I remind myself that the only person that's going to make this go away is me.
I'd love to kind of wrap up by zooming out a little bit and just kind of curious what you see coming in the space and boutique fitness in the industry over the next 2 to 3 years.
I am admittedly hyper focused on what we're doing, right? Versus on a macro level, what's going on. I'm not naive to it, obviously. And I certainly look up and look around and see what other brands are doing that I admire, right? It's one of those things where I'm going to the Athletech Innovation Summit in 2 weeks or so, and I get to speak on stage with Dane McCarthy, who's the founder of Athletic Clubs. And like from afar, I'm a fanboy. I love that brand. I think it's so cool, so different. I see other brands like Metabolic, Fitstop, Yard, you name it. I see like all sexy brands that aesthetically are cool. The programming looks awesome. And yet I continue to then take inventory of that and say, cool, how can we continue to win in a marketplace where there's so many brands that are doing the right things and showing up in amazing ways? So I pay attention from that context. But for me right now, outside of admiring those brands and making sure that we carve out a lane for Alpha Fit Club to still win in, I am so hyper focused on the gaps that we have as a business and listening to our customers, both members and franchisees, and saying, how do we evolve in the next 30, 60, 90, 360 days to make sure that we are evolving as a brand and as a business where we will remain relevant and we are getting better.
All right, last one. Final advice for studio owners or the visionaries of the world in this space, looking to grow something meaningful. What advice would you give to them?
So two different people, in my opinion. The visionaries need to be incredibly confident in themselves and that vision. I think when I go back to when we first launched franchises and I started to get pushback, I started to doubt myself tremendously, and rightfully so. But if you keep showing up and you keep asking yourself, what can I do to get better? And things start to go better, you start to regain that confidence. And I don't know an entrepreneur who like has just got it right time and time again. You've made mistakes, right? We've all made mistakes. And I think as you talk to people who have built businesses worth $1 billion, they'll tell you the war stories and the mistakes they've made along the way. They were just figuring it out too, but they were very focused and they figured it out quickly, and they made less mistakes because they learned from the first ones. So for the visionaries that are trying to build a brand from scratch and build that 100, 500, 1,000 studios, you've got to be willing to trust your gut, and you've got to be willing to be honest with yourself about where you're messing up, and you have to take action on those mess ups. So I think to that second cohort of people within the questions, the studio owners, that same mentality of being honest with yourself about where you're messing up and actually learning from those lessons quickly and not making the same mistake twice. That's the fast track to success, right? Is not making the same mistake twice. And if you can't figure it out, ask for help. Don't think that you have to go it alone. There's people who have solved the problem you're facing. You are not the first person to solve it, or not the first person to go through it, at least.
100%. Thanks so much, Sam. If there's anything you'd like to share, where people can find you, where they can learn more about Alpha Fit Club, we'll put it in the show notes. But it's been great to have you.
Thank you. Yeah, I share way too much of my life on Instagram and now on LinkedIn as well. And if you want to see what's going on in the Alpha Fit Club world, it's literally just at Alpha Fit Club on the IG. A lot of good stuff on the horizon. So I appreciate you for having me. We made it happen. We found the time, and it was awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. And thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Multi-Studio Mastery. We'll catch you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Multi-Studio Mastery. If you're building a studio business you're proud of and these conversations are helping, do us a favor and leave a review, or send this to someone else in the trenches. Every share helps more owners get insight they need to scale the right way. And don't forget, the free Studio Operations Toolkit is always available in the show notes, along with other resources we've mentioned today. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next time.